We're going to use the big one for this, but when you choose a tool to fill in a space, you want to choose the right tool for the job. Now what we're going to be doing is wet on dry and wet on wet, just with one color so you can see what happens. And then we're going to do wet on dry and wet on wet using two colors so you can see sort of the difference. Now to activate your watercolors, you do actually need to put some water in them to activate them because they are dry cake pans. And all I'm going to do is just dip into my water, just add a little bit at a time. Now as I said, and I'm just going to do the bottom part for right now. Dry my brush off. Now the first one I'm going to do is the wet on dry, and really my goal is to stay inside the lines. My goal is to stay inside the lines. Okay, and if you notice, it doesn't really spill out because it has nowhere to go. The paper's dry, okay? It's pretty flat, almost like a marker, but with a brush. Next one, we're gonna do wet on wet. This time I'm going to wet my circle. Again, staying inside the lines. I'm going to do red again, and I'm just going to drop the water, and you'll see how it spreads out. Now it's not going to go past where the wet was. That's the only sort of control you have. Other than that, it really does its thing. So you got to keep watching and observing what you like. If you want to push it in a certain direction, you can. All right, and I get all this sort of variation. Now we're gonna go back to the wet on dry. Now the reason I'm doing this is so you can see how when two colors that are wet next to each other are going to blend in together. So I'm gonna do two colors that are analogous. That means that they are next to each other on the color wheel. You'll see red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. If I use opposite colors, for example, red and green, I'm gonna get brown. Orange and blue, I'm gonna get brown, okay? So if I use colors that are next to each other or similar on the color wheel, I will notice that I get a much nicer, cleaner blend of color. Again, I'm just gonna go right on here, and I'm gonna cut this in half. And now we'll go over here to the orange. And it keeps the lines pretty clean, but some of the red or some of the orange might push in. Okay, those are two colors. Now, if I were to do wet on wet, let me just wet this up. And I'm going to use two colors again. Don't want to use too much wet, just enough that it gets it nice and damp. And that way, what happens is the water knows the path to travel. Kind of like on a windshield. You know, once the rain hits it and it teaches the pathway of a raindrop to travel, raindrops typically go in that direction. All right, here we go. Drop. All right, let's use that analogous color. I think I'll use a different orange this time. I'm gonna really load it up. Okay, I'm being kind to my brush, not killing it. I actually went with 3 colors. Okay, and where it isn't going, I can kind of gently push it. Okay, but it's really a tapping technique. So we've talked a little bit about control, right? Staying within the edges of the area that you want. We talked about pressure, and what's interesting here, unlike crayons, right, where you're pressing harder or pressing lighter, the pressure here is really that gentle kind of dabbing and letting it do its own thing. And then direction, which I gotta say, you know, in watercolors, you really don't have that much control. So you kind of have to let that